So far, the Sean Strickland era has been an interesting one. For me, it was the UFC 276 press conference where he was fighting Alex Pereira, where he went absolutely scorched earth on Israel Adesanya. He made him so triggered, so riled up, that you can see over the course of the press conference, a very faint wet spot begins to form near Adesanya's gyno nipple. And I believe that is liquefied PEDs lactating out of his breast, caused purely by him getting emotional at Sean Strickland.
Grown-ass man on TikTok. Maybe that's the problem, bro.
And
you don't want this guy's a champion.
Do something about it.
You don't want this guy as a champion.
Do something about it then.
Bro,
Do something about
bro,
it.
I will walk outside with you right now. Right now, you want to get my number? Come on, bro, I will walk.
Right there, I smacked you on your ass. The you do?
Listen, bro, you're going to break a nail. Calm down.
I'll break your face. I'll break your fucking face. I'll break my nail in your face.
And that was the moment I realized how dangerous this guy was. Just listening to him at these press conferences, you saw he did not care. You can say whatever you wanted to this guy. He would not get upset. You're not going to get into his head. He has experienced way too much trauma to ever get affected by anything you can say to him. And at the same time, he would rip you to absolute shreds with any ammunition he has at you. So it was a pretty monumental lose-lose to any opponent having to have a verbal joust with this guy. At least, that's what I always thought. But I think at this point,
the memory you have is going to come back when I'm in there with you. Every single one. The one where you lie in bed at night where your dad comes in and he beats the shit out of you.
I will take your fucking soul. You understand me, you fucking pussy? Yeah, you fucking laugh, you
Yeah, oh, I got a nerve. I see I hit a nerve there.
Yeah, you did hit a nerve, you bitch. Go ice your ankle, you coward.
Oh, man, that's it.
All right.
it's safe to say that is not true. God, I mean, at this point, is there anything Dricus Du Plessis can't do? First, he big dicks Robert Whittaker, the perceived second best fighter in the world at that weight class, and then puts Sean Strickland into his feelings. At this point, if he comes out and tells us he is the second coming of Christ, I'm inclined to believe him, because I didn't think either of those things were possible. You know, though, I think it's a little more than just that Strickland's feelings are hurt. I think, honestly, he's been exposed a little bit. Sean went on Theo Von's podcast recently, and he makes some pretty interesting comments regarding the things Dricus said to him during the press conference. And here's what he said.
There's some things that were off limits. You know, you don't really talk about a man's wife.
Yeah.
You don't really, you don't talk about a man's wife. You don't talk about a man's kids. And you don't talk about like fucking a kid being abused. These things were all off limits. And dude, like once he crossed that, it was like, I tried to ignore it. I tried to fucking ignore it, dude.
Were you sitting there thinking throughout the evening a little bit? Like,
Oh yeah, I was boiling, dude. I just told myself like, hey, just,
I fucking hate that, boy. I
Yeah,
hate that
just-
boil.
yeah, I'm just saying there, like you see, I'm just saying them, just ignore it, just fucking ignore it. And then he stopped talking shit. And I'm like, all right, fuck this guy.
These things are all off limits, huh? Well, on a little side tangent, Dricus only brought up the whole child abuse thing one time in the one clip I showed. So I don't understand what he means when he was saying he was trying to ignore it and be patient, because he did not do that. He immediately got upset the one time Dricus said anything. Now, I don't know if maybe he's confusing Sean O'Malley's comment at the start as something Dricus said, or maybe he's just completely making it up to make Dricus seem worse, or he's very well aware of what actually happened, but is just trying to hate the guy as much as he possibly can before they fight. Either way, these comments by Strickland are really interesting because this is one of the first things he said at that very press conference.
I have a question for you. Why don't you guys like Cheeto? He's a warrior. He's a stand-up guy. This top G over here, motherfucker with a status, trying to let dudes his wife. Cheeto's a stand-up motherfucker.
Or how about his beef with Ian Gary?
I never talk about anybody's spouses, but this shit ain't right. It ain't fucking right. I gotta talk about it. Ian Gary.
Or how about every single out-of-pocket thing he's ever said in his life?
You don't really, you don't talk about a man's wife. You don't talk about a man's kids. And you don't talk about like fucking a kid being abused. These things were all off limits.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's a problem with any of these things Sean said. But Strickland has branded himself as the guy who will say and do whatever he wants regardless of anybody's feelings. Yet, the second someone says something that hurts his feelings, now all of a sudden there's a line you can't cross. Even though Sean himself has crossed that line many times. And now all of a sudden, Strickland went from that guy that you just could not get into his head no matter what you said, to now Dricus is in his head, 100%. And given the stylistic matchup between Du Plessis and Sean Strickland, this can have huge implications on this fight. Typically, despite Sean being a wild motherfucker, he fights extremely cool, calm, and collected. His biggest strength is the fact that he will stand right in front of you, right in punching range, and stay very defensively sound. He rarely ever overextends with his punches. He keeps everything very tight and very safe. And this frustrates the hell out of his opponents because he's standing right in front of you using a goddamn Philly shell in MMA, yet you can't hit him. But he's fighting a guy in Dricus who is super awkward, really unorthodox, doesn't look like he's very good at all, but he is an absolute force of nature. The guy is monstrous for the weight class. Has these giant, juicy, girthy forearms. You know what? Maybe not juicy. I'll go ahead and retract that adjective if I can. He can put your lights out with a jab, and if he ends up on top of you, he will absolutely manhandle you with his size and strength. Go ahead and ask Darren Till, Derek Brunson, and Whitaker what it's like to have this guy on top of you, because it does not look like a pleasurable experience by any means. And Strickland's not typically the guy who will put your lights out with one punch. He's capable of it, but for the most part, his wins either come from decision or by melting his opponents in the later rounds. So, in theory, Dricus is not the kind of guy you want to fight emotional and aggressive against. He's way too dangerous. Strickland needs to stay very smart and very technical if he wants to win this fight. And I don't want to sit here and speculate heavily on whether he's going to do that or not. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to know until it happens. But if he keeps this energy during the fight, it might not end very well for him. Because Dricus Du Plessis is not the kind of guy who you want to be running into their shots. Because if there is one thing we know for sure, that is that Dricus is going to open up this fight swinging, with every punch intended to kill. Then exactly 8 minutes in, he's going to gas out completely and be on the absolute brink of death for another 3 minutes straight. Then he's going to catch another wind and he's going to be dangerous again. Rinse and repeat. And if Strickland is not level-headed, he's not calm, and he's not playing his game, he's putting himself at a massive disadvantage.